Our next panel is shifting gears. It's on market demand for organic and non-GE products. And Errol Schweizer, who's the Executive Global Grocery Coordinator for Whole Foods Market, is our next presenter. So I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. My name is Errol Schweizer, the Executive Global Grocery Coordinator for Whole Foods Market. I am responsible for about 30% of our company's sales, grocery being dry goods, packaged foods, dairy, bulk, frozen items, so intimately familiar with this concern since it's primarily related to what we sell every day. Been with Whole Foods about 13 years, selling natural foods for about 20 at this point. So really appreciate the USDA for hosting this and for inviting us. So Whole Foods Market has always been a trend leader in terms of establishing standards. So I just want to give a little context to my presentation here. Since our inception in 1980, we've usually been a few steps ahead of policy as well as even consumers in establishing trends on product. And I'm actually going to walk over here so I can see my slides too, because I do not have them memorized. So among the first standards that we established in 1980 was no artificial preservatives, flavors. It's something that we've held to. Through the years, 2002, no antibiotics in meat, a certain fast food chain. Looks like they're trying to do the same thing. They're also adding kale to their menus. That's McDonald's, by the way. Great. 2003, no hydrogenated oils. 2012, no red-rated seafood. And in 2013, that's why we were asked to come here. We were the first national grocery chain to set a deadline for GMO transparency for all products that we sell. And how we're going to do that is working in collaboration with all of our suppliers, not only on sourcing non-GMO ingredients and verifying non-GMO claims, but really assessing what's in our supply chain. We sell at least 100,000 items alone in my department from thousands of suppliers. So I'll skip this because this was actually covered, but as everybody knows, GMO crops are hegemonic in certain commodities, 94% of soybeans or 90% of corn, cotton, as well as other crops, making it quite a challenge to source non-GMO and organic. So this prevalence of GMOs in our supply chain, as well as the absence of any sort of federal mandatory labeling, makes it very difficult for grocery stores such as ourselves to source non-GMO and for consumers to source non-GMO. Yet we know firsthand that our consumers are passionately seeking non-GMO products. We have over 7 million transactions a week. Just about everybody who's shopping our stores is buying organic and non-GMO. Our stores are primarily located in middle to high-income areas, although we are looking at food deserts now and moving into lower-income areas. But primarily, we have a very highly educated customer base, folks who read a lot, folks who want to know what they're eating. So as we know, the US and Canada still have no real labeling laws, while more than 60 countries do. So our policy covers all food products we sell. This includes plant-based processed foods, where there is heavy GMO concern, as well as animal-derived ingredients and prepared foods. It includes GMO transparency for animal feed. We actually sell several varieties of eggs from suppliers who are using non-GMO feed. Not only has it not affected our organic sales, it's actually one of our top growth trends. And as one of the lead buyers at Whole Foods, that's my job, to find new growth trends and amplify them. At this time, Whole Foods recognizes independent third-party non-GMO verification, including the USDA organic standard, as well as the Non-GMO Project. So it's a commitment of it's actually an example of our commitment to transparency and a way to create a deeper conversation about food, where it comes from, how it's produced. And it's consistent with our other standards, including sustainable seafood, animal compassion, household cleaning products, etc. And if you read food publications, food news, we see other folks coming on board. Once again, McDonald's making statements, Campbell's recently. Chipotle is a leader in this space. The context of this is that transparency is trending. I did hear it mentioned earlier, and I appreciate that. Customers want to know what they're eating. They want to know what's in the ingredient list, how it was made, where it was stored, and whether or not it's safe. Accentuating what's not in a product is as important as accentuating what is. As we know, the market for free from goods is growing rapidly. We've been a leader in the gluten-free space now for well over a decade. And then we want folks to prove their commitment to product safety by enforcing and publicizing their standards and their transparency. I mentioned Campbell's before. Denise Morrison, CEO of Campbell's. I don't work for Campbell's, I work for Whole Foods. But when I read this, I thought this came from one of our folks. We are contending with what I've previously characterized as seismic social shifts that are redefining the fundamental framework in our relationships with customers and consumers. And along with this has come a mounting distrust of so-called big food, the large food companies and legacy brands in which millions of consumers have relied on for so long. It's profound that we're hearing about this from a major CPG. GMO transparency is trending very strongly. Consumer awareness for the term has increased 12 points. It's over 54%. The greatest awareness growth are among folks a little younger than me, the millennials. The usage of non-GMO foods is up 16 points across the general populace, led by mostly younger people. GMO concerns are trending. Over 40% of consumers are avoiding or reducing GMOs in their diet, mostly young folks, as well as parents of children under 8. Over 60% of respondents in some of the largest countries in the world, and 49%, are also concerned. And a bit of a segue to what I do for a living, food launches with organic and GMO-free claims have increased. Organic claims were more prevalent on new items in 2011, 2012, but that was actually surpassed by products with GMO-free claims. Huge jump, up to 45% in 2012 to 2013. Organic claims also jumped admirably. And then a large percentage of snack launches, 34%, and 10% of dairy launches in the last 3 years had GMO-free claims. Huge growth in GMO-free product launches in both the EU and the US, 145% to over 1,350 in this time frame, over 300% growth since 2008. The EU is a little ahead of us, 460%, but we'll catch up. How do we recognize GMO-free claims? We actually don't. We recognize non-GMO claims. There's really no such thing as GMO-free, guys. So when we're talking about coexistence, what we're actually talking about is protecting the organic integrity of our food, protecting non-GMO crops. And non-GMO verified, we estimate there was about 22,000 products in the market. This is outside of and inclusive of Whole Foods, over 1,500 companies, over $8.5 billion with a B in sales. This is 2014, so I assume this is over $10 billion by the end of 2015. Well, what does it mean? Because GMOs are so prevalent, it requires ongoing testing of all at-risk ingredients. We use an action threshold the same as the European Union does, 0.9%, so a little over 1%. So when you see a non-GMO claim, it's not a GMO-free claim. So this notion of coexistence has some concern because even if you're attempting to buy non-GMO, you may still be consuming GMOs. And that's a big concern, as I have shown. The absence of all GMOs is the target for the standard, and it requires rigorous traceability and segregation, so it drives up our cost. It's a lot of work to do this, but it's working. It's up 16% this year. It's our fastest dollar growth trend at Whole Foods Market. We have nearly 10,000 items, which is more than double since our transparency announcement in 2013. Hundreds of leading brands, led by our own store brand, 365. Large natural food brands such as Pacific Foods, Hain Celestial, publicly traded company. 99% of what Hain Celestial does is organic and or non-GMO. And then smaller brands. Just a question. Anybody here shop at Whole Foods Market? Anybody buy any of these brands? Cool. This is what the growth trend looks like. 426% growth since the advent of non-GMO verification since 2010. This is not the same growth trend that the U.S. economy is having. This is, in a sense, one of the fastest dollar and rate growth trends we see in food. And it has not taken away from organic. In fact, it's amplified organic. It's helped clarify organic. Organic is our largest product trend and product segment at Whole Foods. It's up over 10%, which is faster than our store growth. Organic sales have doubled in the last 5 years. Probably double again the next 5, so we've got a little supply work to do. We have at least 15,000 items in my department, probably close to 30,000 across the store. And I can't emphasize this enough, the sales growth is constrained by supply, particularly in grains and dairy. We have a supply problem. Demand's there. You know how we know? All our competitors are coming after it. Last year, Walmart announced, Target said they want to double organic sales. Kroger wants to sell more organic than Whole Foods. Costco is doubling down on organics, and I welcome them all to the party, but I wish they'd make it a potluck and they'd bring their own supply with them, because that's what we all need. So our organic sales in the last few years, up 77% and growing. As some of us are aware of, the USDA NOP prohibits GMOs. It's an excluded method. Not allowed in organic food production, and as we also know, organic is non-GMO plus many, many other desirable attributes for our customers. It's really the gold standard. It's the golden child of American food production. Non-GMO sourcing is a way to protect the heritage and biodiversity of crops, but we're also utilizing it as a bridge to organic, and we have quite a few suppliers who are doing this, so not just stopping at non-GMO, but using it so they could build their supply, so they could take an additional added value for the product in that 3-year transition program when they are organic but can't sell it as such. So non-GMO is a bridge to organic. They're complementary, mutually beneficial. And there's a great potential to grow the supply, as I said. So Whole Foods Market, transparency is our growth engine. It's the world's leading retailer, natural foods retailer. We see other folks jumping on the bandwagon. So it's exceeded overall store growth in the last few years by 54%. This is what our customers want. So that's what the growth curve looks like. So this is the change relative to our department sales. So it's exceeded our own growth, non-GMO and organic. It's also a greater percentage of our own sales, 60%, which in itself is up 10%. Organic is close to half of what we sell. Non-GMO is close to a third, and that's only in the last 5 years. We have categories that are nearly 90% transparent already, so we're only 2 years into this commitment. Consumers are voting in greater and greater droves, and for those of you who don't know what kombucha is, it's a fizzy beverage. Our customers drink it like it's soda. They may bathe in it, they buy so much of it for all I know. Frozen vegetables, non-dairy beverages like almond and soy milk, non-GMO and organic. Over 20 categories are greater than 70% transparency, including eggs. And that includes the non-GMO fed, as well as organic, pasture-raised. And then acquisition categories, so if you're in retail, you know what that means. It's like baby food. We want to get those baby food customers. Almost all the baby food we sell is organic. Whole Foods' position is that federal mandatory GMO labeling is needed for consistency. So consumers are demanding, proving that they want this. They want this information inside Whole Foods and outside Whole Foods. They don't have this transparency and protection when they're not in our stores. And it's our hope that we could eventually get to this place as a country and as an industry. And as I pointed out on that first slide, Whole Foods tend to be a little ahead of trend, so just consider me a visitor from the future. I also want to say that as organic procurement, non-GMO procurement, we need more science on the organic and non-GMO side, especially organic. We need more organic seed research. Actually, I'm a biologist. I'm a scientist. We need organic seed research and organic production systems so that it's comparable and it's relevant to the types of crops and the types of conditions, the types of locales that we need. Most of the organic products that we now sell have been developed in conventional systems. And that puts the whole industry at a competitive disadvantage because we're not focused on yield and productivity and efficiencies, taste, flavor. One of the biggest transparency trends that we're actually seeing in food are more customers demanding products bred for those attributes, such as taste, flavor, and farmers wanting yield and efficiencies. Organic farmers, farmers who are focused on non-GMO. I'll hold for questions.
Thank you. So some questions?
So you've told us a great deal about how popular organic food is. I shop at Whole Foods, but I don't like it because of your attitude towards GMO food. What I want to ask you is your opinion, based on the evidence you know, whether you think GMO food is really a hazard or not, or is it really just a matter of marketing, which is most of what you've told us about. And if you're not convinced that it's safe, what would convince you? Now, I want to just give you an example. No one talks about radiation-induced changes to crops, and a considerable number of our crops have been modified by radiation-induced mutation. There's nothing said about it. It's actually quite undefined. There are lots of genetic changes that occur. It's not regulated, as far as I know, at all. And why is that safe as opposed to the changes we talk about? Would you market radiation? You are marketing radiation-induced food. And I, for one, am shocked that you do so. So could you please comment?
Sure. Our policy is transparency. So customers have a right to know. And our company mandate has been that if a customer asks us a question, it's our responsibility as a retailer to give them an answer and give them a choice. So whatever the assumed attitude is, I'll just clarify that we are pro-GMO transparency. We want our suppliers to label what they're selling. That enables our customers to have a choice in what they're buying. And so all the other information, I know there's going to be a lot of debate here. There's a lot of back and forth on that. And ultimately, our customers want non-GMO and organic products. And as a retailer, as a publicly traded company, it's our mandate to respond to those trends. In terms of irradiation, I think the only thing I'm aware of in irradiation is that we do not source a lot of our spices that are irradiated. Our private label spices go through a food safety process of steam sterilization. Thank you for your business as well. Appreciate it.
Nicholas Kaladzanaragis from the University of Missouri. Thank you very much for all the numbers that you provided. I had two questions that are related. One, the source of the data, and let me qualify my question. For example, you mentioned $8.5 billion of non-GMO sales. I would like to know where that number comes from. And a lot of the growth numbers that you were talking about, I've worked with non-GMO consumer data for about 2 years now. And as a researcher, I'm an economist by training. It must be one of the most frustrating data sets that I've dealt with. The reason is it's very difficult to basically tell what's growth in essence. And by that I mean, if I have an SKU that today is conventional, and then exactly the same SKU tomorrow becomes non-GMO because somebody put a label on it, how do you quantify that? Let me make an example. I like for example, peanuts that there's no GMO counterpart, and I buy them from Target, and one day they became non-GMO overnight. So is this a growth in sales, or is this a growth in a number of a product? Do you count it as such, or is it the same SKU only with a label with similar sales as before? So I would like to know what goes into your calculations as you are putting these numbers, and then the sources of the numbers.
customers? Thank you.
Sure, good question. Appreciate it. It'd be a lot easier for us to track the sales if it was all labeled accurately. As what we have done internally as well as through market data collected from the natural food and actually all the food industry. So my sales data were from internal Whole Foods metrics. I was actually not allowed to put our actual dollar values, but we are able to share the growth metrics. The $8.5 billion number is estimated from the non-GMO project, from the organic and non-GMO report, and from my own conversations and compilations with about 1,200 suppliers who are currently verified. In terms of your other question, I think one of the main reasons why we're seeing so much move on non-GMO is that the vast amount of acreage for GMOs in this country are patented pesticide delivery systems. So those customers who have a perception that they want to avoid additional pesticide use, whether it's Bt in the corn or a Roundup-resistant trait, which obviously the American farming community has embraced, consumers are rejecting that, and that's what we're seeing. A lot of consumers are rejecting pesticides, and they see non-GMO as one way to do that. Obviously, organic is the gold standard for doing that. But in terms of non-GMO, that it doesn't contain a Bt corn, it doesn't contain an oil derived from a Roundup-resistant canola or a Roundup-resistant soy, that's primarily why you're seeing that label spread through so many products, as well as the fact that it's being spread in multi-ingredient products, not just the sheer commodities.
Two more questions. Dr.
Well, it would obviously be possible to take any one of the sort of non-modern ways of plant breeding that were not practiced in Edwardian times and put a label on it and then keep hyping it to the point where people began to believe that it was more important than some other thing. And obviously the big publicity campaigns around this are really what are driving the sales, not any real intrinsic knowledge about the science. Now, scientists worldwide, in all academies, health organizations, individual labs, agree that there is not only no general danger to GMO foods, but there is no theory that could possibly account for them having anything in common that would make them dangerous as a class, because they're not really a class. So when you say you're transparent, do you want to give the entire pedigree of all the plants you sell for the last 10,000 years, or will you just go on hyping this one particular, easy to remember, GM, non-GM, bad stuff and drive sales up? Because obviously, as people found by posting pictures of people drinking beer surrounded by sexy individuals of the opposite sex or anything like that, we have an advertising system that will allow you to hype anything to where you get good sales for it. Are you really interested in all the other ways that plants are bred and what their characteristics are? Or the fact that there is a general scientific consensus that there's no basis for the fear that is being spread by these campaigns? Or not?
Great. We're hoping that you folks start labeling the products. That way the consumer can just make the choice.
We'd rather label them if they're radiated or if they're gene edited or if they're
I think you already had a chance here.
I mean,
I actually do want to make one quick
label
correction
every single
on
way
your,
that we breed plants. It's just nonsensical, and this is a championship
Trying to respond to the
example of
question.
that.
appreciate your passion on the subject. So it's our position as a retailer that we're going to label products. It's the natural food industry's position that we're for federal mandated labeling of GMOs, and we're going to let the customers decide. And for those of you who studied science, and like I said, I actually am a scientist as well, know that science evolves in paradigms. There was a theory of gradualism in geology for years, started by Charles Lyell in the 19th century, and I think we all know that geologists don't consider gradualism as the current theory of geology. I believe spontaneous equilibrium and evolution and similar behaviors in geological systems, and we're assuming that biotechnology and genetic modification as is a current scientific paradigm that will evolve, as you said. And so in the meantime, we're going to label foods that contain GMOs.
We have a question over here.
Yes, please. Pedro Sanchez from Columbia University. I wonder if you have statistics of what happened to organic sales in the States during the Great Recession, this 2008, 2009 thing. Are there numbers that's saying that what I hear is that organic sales dropped down during that time? My question is that true, and by how much?
Nope. In fact, my grocery sales continued to grow during the so-called Great Recession. We continued to comp positively, and our growth trends were led by organic, primarily in organic dairy and commodities. So organic continued not only to exceed store growth, but was well positive in the double digits during the so-called Great Recession. Consumers who buy organic are dedicated to it. There's a whole host of attributes of why folks are buying it, and we didn't see any downturn. In fact, the numbers that I shared are inclusive of that time frame.
But that's in your stores, but overall.
Oh, you're asking generally. Do you have it?
Overall.
I don't have that with me, and so I don't
Okay,
want to
but-
misquote.
Somebody from ER asked me, no, I
Yep.
don't know.
They did go down. If you go to
Well,
Publix
if you know the answer, you should probably be asking the question. That sounds accurate.
overall. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Angela Olson. I shop at Whole Foods every weekend, but
you.
not for GMO reasons. And so I was curious, you clearly are driven by data, and I know Whole Foods is, and that's a great thing. I was curious whether you had gone deeper into doing some additional survey data. Again, I'm there every weekend. I like the seafood you sell. I don't like fillers in my food. I don't like artificial colors. There's a variety of reasons why I shop there, none of which are GMO related. And so I was curious whether you had done an additional survey or whether Whole Foods plans to do such a survey to determine why people are buying certain products. A lot of my cupboards have the non-GMO project on over the last couple of years, but that's not why I'm buying it. I'm buying it for a very different reason, but it just so turns out that Annie's or a lot of the products that you put up there also are involved in the GMO discussion. So just curious whether you also had done an additional survey about why are people buying the products? Because again, for me and for a lot of my colleagues and demographic, the folks that are in my demographic, we're not buying them for GMO reasons. So I was just curious about that.
Sorry, I'm in procurement. I look at what customers do, not what they say, and I give them more of what they want. So you could probably get a whole host of SPINS data, IRI, Nielsen HomeScan, Natural Marketing Institute, Hartman. They've all done studies on this, and they all have information related to your question that you can access publicly. In fact, the Hartman study is online. You could download the PDF, and I think that's probably the most valid and thorough. But as my job as lead category manager for the company's largest department, it's my job to find trends, amplify them, and be accountable to our P&L.
Right. I was just wondering if perhaps those trends aren't really related to GMOs. They may be. I haven't seen the data.
They're definitely related to GMOs. So the one study I referenced was the Hartman Group. You should definitely check that out. NMI and Nielsen all have information on this. So this is well outside of just Whole Foods Market. And I also want to point out that our largest competitors, including Walmart, Target, Kroger, are not only increasing the number of organic and non-GMO items that they sell in their stores, but moving their store brands into that same space. So that's profound.
So we just have a minute or two for a couple more questions.
I got one over here.
Okay.
Well, you go ahead, sir. I'll go after you.
Okay.
David Zilberman, Berkeley. First, congratulations for having a great business and basically taking over a very nice slice of richer customer. You spoke about, do you really believe that you'll be able globally to feed 9 billion people with organic, since it's a gold standard and everyone should have the gold standard?
Yes.
And how do you see to tackle or to take advantage of new discoveries or in biology and new knowledge in genetics? Do you try to incorporate it, or you try to ignore it altogether so you'll stay pure?
Like I said, it's my job to give customers in our stores what they want. I think there are starting to be more studies showing about the yield and efficiency in organic systems, including the Rodale Institute's Farming Systems Trial, which is a 30-year crop study comparing conventional GMO and organic systems. That is a scientific study. You may want to check it out. And it does show that organic improves yield, is lower cost, and higher profit. And I did say before, and I want to emphasize, we need more research. We need more information. There's SRI rice systems that are being developed in India as well as Southeast Asia, showing that you have higher yield, lower water usage, high efficiency systems for growing rice, especially in drought conditions, that are non-GMO systems. So there is some data, and as a scientist, but also as a retailer, I'm looking forward to seeing more.
Thanks, Errol, for sharing with us. Laura Batch. I have two quick comments and then a question for you. I think just to corroborate the question about organic sales during the recession, never dipped below negative. It went below double digits, which has been our trend over the last 10, 15 years, but it went down to about 5% growth during the height of the recession. So to clarify that, second clarification, irradiation is also an excluded method in the organic standards, so it's not allowed in organic production systems. And I'm not an expert outside of organic, but my understanding is products that are irradiated also require labeling for communication to the consumer. So I want to try to bring us back to the discussion that we're here to have based on coexistence. And as the Secretary laid out, I hope that we don't get too bogged down all day long on debates that are outside of this idea of farmer choice and consumer preferences, because I think there's a lot of experts in the room in other areas, and I just, I call on all of us in the room to sort of stay with our task here and talk about that. So I'm wondering, Errol, if you can share with us in your move to try to meet your mandate in 2018, where you're having challenges in terms of sourcing ingredients and supply chain issues, and some of the nitty-gritty of what you have to work through to meet that preference.
Yeah, it's like pushing a rope uphill. So I actually just want to respond to a statement earlier today about the U.S. importing corn to Mexico. I'm actually importing corn from Mexico, heirloom corn, because we can't get farmers here to grow enough non-GMO varieties. We're having to import organic and non-GMO crops. It's, I feel, a huge issue, and I think we need a lot more farmers in the United States to really get with the market. There is not honest market signals for organic and non-GMO. They're not traded as futures on the CME. Most farmers are not aware of it unless they have a Whole Foods or Kroger or some retailer in their area. So I think there's not enough of a market signal to show that the consumer in the United States is demanding organic products and the supply is not keeping up. We had 50% out of stocks on organic butter during the holidays for a couple weeks. That is really scary, and that's because the supply is constrained. There's not enough organic grain, and obviously our customers are drinking a lot more whole milk, so there's not enough skim to make the butter fat. So we need more organic grain production in the United States, and we need more research on organic grain and organic dairy production to make it higher yield, more efficient. So I think that's the major issue we're having right now with organics. And demand and those growth charts, those growth numbers that I showed you guys would be a lot higher this year if we'd actually been able to keep in stock of all the products that we sell that are organic. And I think that's the major thing I want to get across here. Not only is organic the gold standard for agriculture, organic is the future of American agriculture. You don't see growth trends like this in any other attribute in the food industry. Customers want organic, so we need to produce more organic.
Thanks.
Great.
Time for one more?
It has to be brief because we need to
It'll be brief.
transition to the next.
I'm a farmer from Massachusetts. We grow identity preserved grains, a variety of them, corn, wheat, and many others. We struggle a lot with this idea of coexistence, of making sure that we're giving the customers what they want, and one of our biggest customer demands is, in fact, GMO-free. It's really easy on something like wheat. It's hard on corn. But we grow it, we process it, we sell it all ourselves, we self-distribute, so that does make it easier. But what we struggle with is making sure that we're not trying to create a market for a particular thing that consumers are looking for and not getting, and trying to boost that. You made the comment earlier that Whole Foods not only meets the customer demands, but they lead the trends. How do you make sure you're not creating those trends that are missing and therefore being able to meet them? And that is something that divides agriculture. I think selling identity preserved or GMO-free grains does not divide agriculture, does not hurt coexistence. But creating those trends yourself does, and what do you do to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, sure. As a category manager, I review dozens of categories every month, as well as many different product attributes. For instance, gluten-free is no longer growing at Whole Foods Market. It seems that the allergen-free community is either finding it elsewhere or it's not as popular. We're finding that other product attributes such as cleaning standards are not as big a growth trend. It's not as attractive to have a transparently labeled dish soap or laundry soap, which, by the way, we were the first retailer to ever do as well. So when we find a product trend with not only this annual year-over-year growth, but the compound annual growth, it's profound. And it's showing us that there is a consumer behavior, and the fact that our suppliers drove this for us. We didn't drive our suppliers into this. Suppliers were becoming non-GMO verified in 2010 and 2011. Their product sales shot up once they put that logo including organic items, because the consumer, we're assuming, is seeing it as an additional level of assurance and a way to validate that it's organic and non-GMO. So because I'm able to review, I mean, I have 90 plus categories in grocery. Each category has, 1 to 2 dozen product attributes, subcategories, classes. I'm a data jockey. Like, I look at this stuff, and some stuff doesn't work. But when you have something like this, it's a big deal. And I think that the USDA needs to respond. And I think, like I said, we want to see federal mandated labeling. And it's obvious the consumer's ahead of trend at Whole Foods. And by the way, we do sell a lot of identity preserved and heirloom crops as well. And in some cases, those sell really well. And in some cases, the consumer actually doesn't care.